Hey everyone, this is our lesson on naming and formulas for covalent compounds. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to interpret the name and formula for compounds using IUPAC convention. And before we get started, you may want to pause the video and review covalent bonding just so you remember the ins and outs. So now let's talk about naming covalent compounds from the formula. So unlike ionic compounds, you do not have to worry about balancing charges here or paying attention to charge to name the compound. We had to do that with transition metals. You do not have to do that here. Covalent is much simpler. What you do have to do is pay attention to the subscripts that are given. So they will tell you the prefix that you need, because in covalent compounds, we will tell you how many you need by a prefix. So there's no like crisscrossing or anything you have to do here. Come on. I don't know why this, there it goes. So very similar to ionic, you're going to name the first element like normal, the second one with an IDE ending, just in the order that they are given in the formula. So that's identical. And then you add a prefix to tell you the subscript. So we look at the subscript in the formula and the prefix that aligns with that subscript. Sometimes the vowel at the end of the prefix can be dropped when the name of the element also begins in a vowel, because we don't like to have those double vowels back to back. And I'll show you an example in a second. If the first element is carbon or it does not have a subscript. So basically, if carbon is in the compound, one, or it does not have a subscript, the first one does not have a subscript, it will not get the prefix mono. So we don't ever put mono on the first element. And this chart here, you may want to pause the video and write down in your notes. I think I have a spot for you to do that so that you know these prefixes. But please make sure you pay attention to the fact that 4 is tetra, just like we learned with Vesper theory. It is not going to be like quad or anything like that that you probably are used to hearing in math. All right, so let's go through this first example. We're going to name CO. So our steps are pretty basic. You're going to name the elements, make sure the second one has the IDE ending. So just like normal, the first one is carbon, the second one is oxygen, becomes oxide. Then we have to pay attention to the subscripts for any prefixes that are needed. Both of them have a subscript of 1. Remember, mono is the prefix for that, but we don't put that on the first element ever. So our name is carbon monoxide. If you're writing this out, you would see that it would be monoxide. But to prevent that double vowel, we get rid of that O on the end of mono. We wouldn't want to say monoxide or monoxide, so we get rid of one of those. And there's just a reminder of that. Now I want you to pause the video and try this example, CBr4. So now let's talk about how we get the formula from the name. So we're doing the opposite here. Thankfully, again, much easier than ionic, because I feel like writing the formula of an ionic is one of the toughest ones you'll have to deal with. So if I give you the name, you write the symbol for each element in the name. And then all you do is you see if there's a prefix. If there's not, you give it a subscript of 1, which means you don't have to write it. Or if there is a prefix, write the subscript that matches that prefix. So here's some examples there. So NO, we've got nitrogen, oxygen becomes oxide. They both have a subscript of 1, so nitrogen doesn't change. And then we've got monoxide. So there are just some good examples here. So now let's walk through this example. So the formula is, or we want the formula for dinitrogen pentoxide. So we write the symbols for each part of the name, N for nitrogen, O for oxide. Then we write the prefixes that determine, or we look at the prefixes that determine the subscript. So remember, di is 2 and pent or penta is 5. So then you just add those on there. N2O5 is your answer. So you go ahead, pause the video, and try your example at the bottom. All right, guys, so hopefully now you can name and write formulas for covalent compounds.